Hey there, this is Natalie, and Arc 7, Chapter 17, Creeping Evil, is probably the best chapter of the arc so far, in my opinion. I was definitely wrong with my predictions at the end of Chapter 16, and Subaru really did die there, but I also have to apologise because I think I misunderstood something at the end of the last chapter. I thought Subaru and Flop were still in the bedroom of the inn when Subaru had that sudden death, when in actual fact they were outside, already heading to the tavern where Flop was going to help Subaru find what he needed. I do make these summaries using machine translations, so sometimes transitions like that aren't clear to me, but it definitely makes a lot more sense that Subaru was able to be killed while out in the city rather than there in the bedroom. So, let's get straight into the chapter, and I'll talk about the possible identity of the killer at the end. This chapter starts right where chapter 16 left off, with Subaru realising he's gone back in time by just a few minutes, and that he has no idea what killed him. He struggles to remember, but there are really no clues, and he can only really liken it to the time he was sniped by Shaola in Arc 6. Flop is still continuing to say the same dialogue as before, and Subaru has to wonder if he was the one who killed him, though he doesn't have the impression that Flop is someone who could kill him instantly with a single blow. He needs to find out if Flop would have any motive to kill him, so he asks Flop why he's been treating him so well. Flop surprises Subaru by saying his motive is revenge. But he then goes on to explain the backstory of him and his sister, and it turns out he doesn't mean anything sinister by that. Flop and Medium were abandoned by their parents and grew up in an orphanage where they were badly treated. One night, Flop thought he'd found a way to escape, but it failed and he was badly beaten. He reached the conclusion that the adults beating the children weren't happy either. Everyone was miserable. So he resolved to become a merchant to get himself and his sister out of that misery and to help as many other people out of the cycles of misery as they could. This, he decided, would be his revenge on the world, and helping Subaru, Rem and Louis is part of that. Subaru believes Flop is sincere and says that he's happy he met him and Medium. Now he's satisfied that Flop is not a threat, though he's no closer to knowing what killed him or how to avoid it. He tells Flop that the road they're on isn't very feng shui friendly and that they need to take another one. Obviously, Flop has no idea what he's talking about, but since Subaru sounds so serious, he agrees to the detour and that they can head onto the main street, which is more crowded. But then Flop turns to speak to Subaru and his face is astonished. Subaru is unable to ask why, because his throat has been cut. This time he does experience the pain of death, worrying about getting back to Rem at the inn as he dies. Subaru returns by death, and this time he understands how he died, but he still has no idea who the enemy is or why it happened. At first he wants to retreat back to the inn, and Flop notices his visible panic and thinks he needs his wife to comfort him. But as he considers the different routes available to them, he realises he doesn't want to reveal where Rem is to the enemy, and tells Flop that they can't go back to the inn after all. Flop is understandably confused by Subaru's sudden, odd behaviour. Subaru thinks about how Flop is a good person and doesn't deserve to be caught up in this. After some deliberation, he tells Flop that they're being chased. However, before they can do anything about it, there's a scream. In fact, lots of people are screaming. Flop sees what's happening first, and then Subaru. A giant wheel is heading towards them. Subaru is struck by a dragon carriage and sent flying, his body crushed. It says that with over 30 deaths behind him, Subaru can tell when his body has taken too much and death is inevitable, and this is one of those occasions. He can hear the screams of other people all around him, but he can't respond because his mouth is broken. It seems like his head has been crushed. Once again, he returns by death. He's been killed once instantly, once by decapitation, and once by dragon car, and the only information he has is that there is an enemy, and that they're determined to kill him. He thinks too that it's unlikely that they stop at him, that Flop must be being killed too in these situations as a witness. He tells Flop that they should run and grabs him by the arm. Flop protests, confused again by Subaru's erratic behaviour and complaining that it's messing his hair up, but he runs with him to the tavern. Subaru's plan now is to hire someone to protect them right away. They make it to the bar and inside, Subaru tells the owner, who is a white-haired middle-aged man, that he wants to hire the best man there. The owner knows Flop, and it seems like Flop and Medium have a good reputation for helping people. The owner tells them that the best man to hire is Rowan, indicating a man drinking at a table. He can't see his face yet, but the number of empty glasses on his table shows that he likes to drink in the day. The bar owner says that he has a bad drinking habit, but he's good at it. Subaru wastes no time in approaching Rowan, with Flop following him over to his table. Rowan is slumped over the table, perhaps drunkenly sleeping, and Subaru shakes his shoulder. Rowan looks up and Subaru sees that his serious face is ruined by a red nose, and the smell of alcohol coming off of him makes Subaru feel a little bit dizzy, where he's not used to being around heavy drinkers. At the mansion, only Otto and Roswell really drink much, and Subaru doesn't drink at all, even though he knows he's old enough to in this world. Subaru asks the bar owner if this guy really is the best man, if he was joking, and the man replies that he isn't running a bar for fun. Rowan says that he doesn't have enough alcohol, and asks for some sake. Flop tries to buy him a drink, but Subaru stops him, probably thinking that there isn't time to waste. He tells Rowan that they're not there to drink with him, but to hire him, and he can buy plenty of sake with the money. He says he wants an escort, starting from right now. Rowan asks if they're in danger. Subaru puts his whole bag of gold coins on the table, with all of the remaining money from selling the demon beast horn. He tells Rowan that this is the maximum he can pay. Flop is surprised by this, because of course, when they set out, Subaru had been talking about needing to get a good deal. Subaru hasn't got a sense of the currency here in Wallachia yet, but from what he has seen, it isn't too different to Lagunica, and he believes that someone could live comfortably with this money for a year. Rowan accepts the job, but Flop asks Subaru if he's really okay with this. Subaru says safety is worth more than the money right now, and apologises for surprising Flop, as well as thanking him for introducing him. Rowan says that Subaru hasn't told him his name yet, but before Subaru has the chance to tell him, Rowan holds up his hand and looks with sharp eyes at the tavern window. He asks Subaru who's chasing them, having noticed a sign of danger that nobody else has become aware of yet. Subaru says that he truthfully doesn't know, but he sensed it outside, and that's why he rushed here to hire someone to help them. Rowan seems serious now, but confident in his skill, and Subaru admires the sword at his hip. He reminds Subaru of a samurai, even with his long, loose hair. He feels somewhat reassured by Rowan's presence. But then, suddenly, a man falls screaming through the door of the tavern. Most of the other mercenary types drinking in the bar barely pay the collapsing man any attention, but Flop and the bar owner try to help him up. He's trying to talk, but Subaru senses there's something bad going on and urges them to get away from him. The man's body suddenly starts to swell and then shines bright red before exploding. There are flames everywhere, and it becomes clear that the man had been a human bomb. It seems like a magic stone of fire had been inside him, causing this to happen. The men at the epicenter of the explosion in the middle of the bar are covering their eyes and groaning in pain, and they try to get out through the front door, but a second explosion hits them head on and kills them. Rowan snaps Subaru out of his horror at the scene by grabbing him and announcing to the owner that he's going to leave by the back door, as the front is clearly being watched. The bar owner reaches the back door first, with Rowan and then Subaru and Flop following, but he screams back that it won't open. With the front entrance destroyed and the bar burning, they're in danger of suffocating if they can't get out. Rowan breaks the door with his sword and urges everyone to crouch down. Suddenly, though, Subaru gets a bad feeling. It seems unlikely to him that the enemy would have allowed it to be possible for them to simply leave through the back entrance. His fears are confirmed, as Rowan slumps to the ground dead. Subaru, Flop and the bar owner all see that his head has been crushed and his eyes are hanging down. The bar owner tries to scream, but is struck with a fatal blow that sends his body rolling into the flames, instantly creating the smell of burning meat. Now, through the smoke and flames, appears a man with a damp cloth over his face and a large axe in his hands. Flop asks who he is and why he's doing this, but the man responds by bringing his axe down on Flop's head and killing him instantly too. Subaru, who's now wet himself in fear and is sitting in the blood of the other men, also tries to ask why, though he knows it's stupid to do so after he just saw what happened to Flop. There's no reason why the man would be merciful or give him answers. He knows he's about to die, but he asks again, why? And finally, the man whose face is hidden responds, saying he won't tell him anything because it would be a problem if he escaped again. He lowers the axe to kill Subaru, who's trying to recall where he heard this familiar voice before. As the axe breaks Subaru's skull with the same sound he heard when he was killed instantly in chapter 16, the chapter ends. So, it definitely seems like the man Subaru is facing here is Todd. Todd has also used an axe as a weapon, and the line about Subaru escaping again implies this is someone Subaru has escaped from before. Plus, according to Japanese speakers, the way this man speaks is written similarly to Todd's dialogue earlier in the arc. I don't think there's much doubt then that that's who this is, and given the different attacks, with the final one on the bar seeming pretty coordinated, I think it's likely he's not working alone, and perhaps we'll also be seeing Jamal and maybe some other surviving men from the Valakian Imperial Army camp in this plotline. It does seem reasonable that Todd could have survived the Sudrak attack on the camp, perhaps not even being back from pursuing Subaru yet when it happened. And from a more meta perspective, I don't think so much time would have been spent on establishing Todd and Jamal as characters if they were just going to die off screen and never be heard of again. It definitely also seems reasonable that he would have figured out that Subaru was the cause of that attack, and would want revenge on him. But to me, the only thing making me have a tiny, less than 1% doubt that it is him, is that he does seem kind of strangely powerful and effective here. He seemed like a skilled soldier before, but now he's become some kind of unstoppable badass. Killing Subaru in a sneak attack with an axe certainly seems like something Todd could do, but the more organised attacks with the dragon carriage and the human bomb, in a city Subaru has only been in for a matter of hours, leaving little time for setup, as well as with this guy being able to one-hit Rowan, make him seem like he's a lot more effective than the guy Subaru simply ran away from before. This could just be what Todd is like once he gets serious, and it could be that now Subaru knows who he's up against, that he isn't anything superhuman. It might not be so hard to find a way to beat him, but it's also possible there's something else going on here. Like perhaps Todd's backup isn't Jamal or other normal soldiers, but someone like one of the divine generals. But whatever happens, it's definitely an interesting development. I also hope that Rowan wasn't just a one-off character for this scene, because he seems like he could be a pretty cool character. And until Rem gets her full mobility back, Subaru's alliance here does lack combat strength, though we haven't really seen what medium can do yet in a fight, to be fair. I do think what's going to happen here is that Subaru, one way or another, is going to end up killing Todd, and this is going to be something he's going to struggle with, because Todd, like the other Imperial soldiers whose deaths he was horrified at having caused, isn't really anything to do with the things Subaru has been involved in so far. Subaru can't make sense of the mindset of the people in Valakia, or of Vincent, who told him more than once that it's idealistic to think you can protect what you care about with no bloodshed. This whole situation arose just because Subaru wanted to survive and save Rem, not because he's in any way involved in the Valakian conflicts. To be unable to avoid killing Todd, now he's determined to kill Subaru, is going to cause him a lot more inner turmoil than killing Sin Archbishops, and I think that's going to be the next progression for Subaru in this arc, from having had to accept the deaths the Sudrak caused for him before. Having to kill Todd and accept it as necessary in his mission to protect what's important to him, will mean he has to admit that Vincent and the Sudrak were right in some ways. Still, what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments, and I'll be back with chapter 18 very soon because it's already been released. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you again very soon.